Hello again, my friend. I'm Eric Miller. I have another article I'd like to share with you today. I just published this over on Substack. So I'll put a link to that full article in the description below. So you can take a look at that if you like to read it as well. There's some other stuff in there too you want to catch on the article. I'm probably not going to share with you today when I'm talking about it. So I'm glad you're here. This subject I'm going to talk about, higher power and God, is one that can be pretty difficult for men to grapple with, especially if you've had the word God used against you somewhere in your life. So maybe it was someone who was a key influencer growing up with you as a parent or a relative or someone that was close to you that weaponized the name of God against you in some sort of disciplinary way, or they used it to shame you about a behavior that you had been doing. So I can tell you that the Christianity that can be forced on people, the movements that are happening in the United States today, can be used against us, used against men in order to control us, to manipulate our behaviors, our thoughts, and create also a toxic masculinity that's pervasive around our culture today. So I want to give you a quick tip about if you have a problem with the name of God. So a few years ago, I was working with a young man, and he did have that problem. And I kind of, even going even further back than that, I had a problem too. And I was working with a man, a mentor, sponsor, who said, replace that name of God. Replace it with something else. Replace it, could be higher power, but rename God for yourself. If you have a problem with the name, rename it for now to get you going, so you can see something that you have help. It's not just all on you. And that's, I think, one of the bigger things that we learn in our 12 steps, that we have something, a being greater than ourselves that can help us through these nightmares we've been going through for sometimes years and years and years. So without further ado, let me jump into the article. I have some commentary at the end. By the way, I'd ask a favor of you. This is only the second one I've done so far, so maybe it's a ask that's too soon, but there's some other content maybe you see on the channel that you like. But would you subscribe? Would you like it? Maybe even make a comment, something that's worked for you. Maybe even about how you've named God, how that changed for you. That would be great if you leave a comment. All right, let's jump in. The name of the article is Higher Power for the Guy Who Still Flinches at the Word God. Step 2 is not asking what you think it is. All right, let's jump in. You sit in the meeting. A chairperson reads Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Around the room, heads nod. A few guys mumble it along with the person. You stare at the floor. Because the word in that sentence, the one nobody says out loud, but everyone hears, is God. And every time you hear God, something in you tightens up just a little bit. Maybe it's the church you grew up in. Maybe it's the pastor who knew what was happening in your house and did nothing about it. Maybe it's the youth group that loved you only if you're willing to perform for them, do stuff for them, volunteer for free. Maybe it's the funeral where the priest said the wrong thing about the wrong person. Maybe you don't even remember why. You just know that when somebody says God, your shoulders pull in just about a half an inch and you tense up. I want to tell you something nobody told me for a long time. That flinch, it's not a problem. That flinch is giving you information. The wrong question. Most men I sit with assume step 2 is asking them to believe in God. It really isn't. Read it again, slower this time. Let's read it together. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. There's no name in that sentence, no theology, no church, no book. The step doesn't tell you who this power is. It doesn't tell you what the power wants. It doesn't even tell you that this power is even personal. It tells you one thing, and that one thing only is something other than you has the capacity to do for you what you cannot do for yourself. That's a much smaller claim then you must believe in God, right? And it's much harder one to argue with too, because you already know it's true. If you could have fixed yourself, you would have by now, right? You tried for years with everything you had. You read books, you made the rules, you white knuckled it through the nights. You swore to yourself it would be different this time. And you ended up back in the same place every time. Whatever runs your life, when you're running it alone, that's the thing this step is asking you to step away from. It's not asking you to find God. It's asking you to admit that you aren't God. Let me repeat. It's asking you to admit that you aren't God. There's a real difference between those two things. What a workable higher power can actually look like. Here's what I tell men when they get stuck here. Your higher power doesn't have to be God you were taught, the God you were taught. Your higher power doesn't have to have a name. It doesn't have to have a face. It doesn't have to live in a book or a building. It doesn't have to want anything from you. It doesn't even have to like you. What it has to do is one thing: be larger than your own will. For some men, that's the group. The room is of strangers who somehow stay sober when you cannot. The collection of wisdom of people who have walked the road longer. There's something in a healthy meeting that's bigger than any single one person that's in it. That's the power of the greater power than yourself. And you can use that. For some men, it's the natural world, the mountain that doesn't move when you yell at it, the river that keeps flowing whether you believe in it or not, the simple indifferent fact that the universe was here before you and will be here after you're gone. That's the power greater than yourself. You can use that. For some men, it's part of themselves. Reread that. For some men, it's the part of themselves that knows. The voice that on your worst nights still whispers, this is not who you are. It's not your willpower. It's not your ego. Something greater, something quieter or older than those. You can call it a conscience. You can call it the soul. You can call it the deeper self. It's the power greater than the version of you that picks up. You can use it. For some men, eventually, sometimes after years, it becomes something more personal, something they end up almost reluctantly calling God. Not the God they were handed, a different one they had to find for themselves. That last one isn't required. It may come, it may not. The step doesn't care. The step only cares that you find something to lean in that's not you, my friend. I'd ask you to try something this week. So if you're stuck on step 2, try this. Stop trying to figure out who or what your higher power is. Start paying attention to what has already been carrying you. Make a list, be honest. What's kept you alive when you should have been dead? What has pulled you out of the nights you don't talk about? Who's shown up? What rooms have you walked into broken and walked out just a little bit less broken? What moments have you had, even one where something happened that was bigger than you and you knew it? That's the starting point. You don't have to name it. You don't have to define it. You don't have to defend it to anyone. You just have to admit it quietly to yourself. Something other than my own will has been at work in my life, and I'm willing to stop fighting it. Powerful, powerful stuff. That's step 2, my friend. The rest will come later. All right, one last thing I want to share with you, and I want to preface this with a thought. I'm going to offer you time to sit with me or another spiritual director. That's what I do. I'm a spiritual director and a spiritual coach. And this is a free thing. Maybe there's some reluctance. And I'm not trying to replace a sponsor or trying to replace the program. People that are sponsors are wonderful people. I've had some wonderful men in my life that have helped me exponentially. What I found to be true for myself was that as good as they were, unless they were spiritual directors, they didn't have that training, that self inner work, that spiritual formation that's so required to help another man to walk with a man in a spiritual journey. I didn't have that, and it was scary for the first 3 years I was sober. So that's what this is. So bear with me for a minute. If what I've been talking about is sitting with you, you like to talk to a man who's worked through this himself. That's me. One who still flinches at certain words, who still has questions that he doesn't have answers to, who knows the difference between religion and what you're actually looking for. The door to my organization, New Mindset Pathways, is open to you. A free 30-minute conversation we can have together. No pressure, no agenda, not asking you for anything. Just two men talking honestly about what's stirring. I will tell you this, that there is a charge for it if you decide to start doing spiritual direction work with me. But if you're in a part in your recovery where you're financially recovering also, I've got a scholarship program for that. So I feel okay in sharing this with you because of that component, that, the program is free. And if you're at a place where you can't afford spiritual direction, I don't want that to ever be a barrier for any young man that is rebuilding a life. So let me leave that there. All right, next week I'm going to have the article I'll share with you called "I'm Doing Fine Might Be the Most Spiritually Dangerous Sentence You Can Say." I want to close with this with you, my friend, that you are a worthwhile person no matter what it is you've been through in your life. If you've had God invoked in a way in which was weaponized against you to make you feel less than, to shame you into a certain different behavior, and of course that doesn't work with us, right? Then it's time to start shifting what that means to you as far as what a higher power is. You are a worthwhile person. You are worthy. You have it in you to be able to make these changes. Sometimes it just takes some guidance on your journey to do that. I look forward to talking to you again soon.